Qing, who had driven the dramatic changes in heaven and earth with his own efforts and enjoyed the benefits of soaring in the immortal realm, never imagined that his new journey in the immortal realm would start as a dowry cook. In order to let everyone know that they are refining. Device. Teacher. Let's start by patching up the pot. Repairing becomes the way makes me king. During the maintenance period of the new article, everyone is welcome to take a look at the previous part of this article. The treasure mother in the wealthy one's side of the cultivation realm, completed, keywords of the novel. I am in the Xianjie Fugia side without pop-ups. I am downloading the complete TXT collection in the Xianjie Fugia side, and I am reading the latest chapters in the Xianjie Fugia side. Chapter 1. A New Journey. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. A New Journey. There is a fairy realm that was punished by the heavenly execution due to the reverse actions of its upper beings, and became the lower realm. Millions of years later, Xiaoli Jie served his sentence and endured the final punishment. He was reborn and reconnected with the immortal realm, which is located in the vast expanse of the New World. The return of the realm of sin caused a considerable shock in the immortal realm. Mistakes are common, exiles are common, but few can return. Surprisingly, this literally realm was not annihilated during its million-year exile, but was able to survive and come back, indicating a great opportunity for a withered tree to bloom. Furthermore, there has always been a rule that whether it is actively striving for a normal promotion, or someone promoting a backstage relationship, or turning a new leaf, as long as one starts from the bottom, heaven and earth will bestow blessings as rewards and encouragement, usually in the form of talented individuals, spiritual treasures, and heavenly treasures, which are the opportunities that outsiders desire. For a moment, people from the immortal realm rushed towards this place to select people and search for treasures. The new world is named Tianen by the three grateful tribes of Xiaoli, with one end located in the middle of the three continents of Chia Tian, Yunjing Tian, and Huanma Tian, respectively belonging to Xiaoli people, demons, and the other end appearing in the fairy world. People in the immortal realm have their own means, sensing that the returning immortals from the lower realm have come one after another to search for treasures, fearing that they will be snatched by others one step later. However, the people in Xiaoli realm lack confidence. Those with a cultivation level of above Yuanying of the three clans have teamed up and boldly explored carefully, while those with insufficient cultivation are eagerly waiting in their respective territories, waiting for their elders to bring good news back, and also waiting for the protection of Xiaoli realm's predecessors who have flown to the immortal realm in the past. However, there was a single person from Xiaoli who entered directly, regardless of the difficult future or the treasures of heaven and earth, unable to stop her footsteps towards the direction of the mysterious induction. This person is young and agile, with a neat blue and white dress tied around his body with a dark wide waistband. His sleeves are tightened, and his thick hair is combed back tightly, firmly securing the back of his head. Traveling in the wind, soaring into the clouds and diving into the jungle in an instant. Running and turning around. This person is a casual cultivator from Xiaoli realm, named Qing, with dual spiritual roots of gold and fire, and a cultivation level of Yuanying. He mainly cultivates weapons. Due to the close connection with the changes and comeback of Xiaoli realm, after welcoming everyone and passing the final punishment on Xiaoli realm, he had his own luck and arrived at the heavenly grace continent, sensing the opportunity bestowed upon him by heaven. He hurriedly searched for it. Qing glanced back and ran non-stop for 3 days, finally shaking off the annoying and unknown species of fierce bird and letting out a sigh. The opportunity bestowed upon her by the heavens was the spiritual fire that she had been longing for all these years. At this moment, even immortals could not stop her dream from coming true. Otherwise, kill whatever comes. The monsters in the immortal realm are much more difficult to deal with than those in the lower realm, Qing muttered with lingering fear, lifting his left wrist to wipe the sweat off his forehead. At the corner of his eye, he saw the sleeves tightly wrapped around his arm, with rows of scattered small holes on his head. These were all left for her by the ferocious bird that looked like a swan. The unknown species of bird was actually a master of sound waves, with a row of exhaust needles shooting through its mouth. Fortunately, she persisted in exercising and her physical strength was comparable to that of spiritual weapons, but unfortunately, she was dressed in good clothes. There are several loops of cloth bracelets wrapped around the left wrist, which is a thin silk cloth tightly wrapped around the top. This silk cloth is Qing's greatest reliance and also the greatest opportunity. It was originally an immortal treasure, but after breaking away from its original owner, it wandered around and was eventually killed by Qing blind cat's mouse. It took a long time as a rag for Qing, who had just started practicing, to discover abnormalities and uncover the secrets inside. There is spirit in the silk cloth, and Qing called it Xiaobu. Xiaobu has collected various martial arts secrets and is recognized by Qing as the golden finger she crossed. That's right, Qing came from the end of modern society. She had a strange fate with her daughter Hunyuan, and two people from different time and space were connected by fate. They experienced a strange and happy time, and finally, the mother and daughter embarked on the path of cultivation in the Xiaoli realm together. Hunyuan became a major disciple of the Chaohua sect in the Xiaoli realm, and Qing did some casual cultivation. In a certain way, Qing dared to do independent casual training, relying solely on the support of silk cloth. After all, there is a complete collection of silk fabrics in the immortal realm, which is not inferior to the inheritance of a major sect in the cultivation realm. That's just an ordinary monster. How do you feel? Have you arrived somewhere? Said Jubu, exchanging thoughts with her. Qing looked around hesitantly and said, I feel almost there. Is there any mysterious cave in this wilderness? You look carefully, said the silk cloth. Qing Qian wanted to find it, but only took a step forward while standing on a tree branch. The wind and sun suddenly turned into lightning and thunder, and she turned back suddenly. Where could she see the wild greenery of the past? Her eyes were filled with the darkness of the sky and the earth, the fierce wind and rain hitting her eyelids, and the sound of thunder rolling overhead. Undoubtedly, I mistakenly entered some barrier formation. With a right-hand grip, Qing was about to summon the white kiss of her destiny sword when an electric light suddenly burst above her head. In the bright blue and purple light, Qing, who had been hit, cursed profusely on his face. The next second, she fell backwards, and the scene before her changed once again, turning into a warm sunny beach. It seems this is your lucky spot, said the silk cloth, taking a closer look. A carp stood upright, Qing standing steadily, realizing that he must have entered a small secret realm. In this secret realm, the mountains are not high, with heavy white mist outside. Inside the mountains, there is a deep blue lake, and the lake water is so quiet that there are no ripples. She is standing on a narrow beach less than 2 meters wide by the lake. Not far from the beach, between the mountains and the lake, there is a red leaf and white tree growing. The forest surrounds the lake for half a circle, with water in front of the forest and mountains behind it. The closeness of the mountains and waters reveals the compactness of this secret realm. Look at the top of the forest, exclaimed the silk cloth in surprise. Qing looked over and saw a glowing object flowing at the top of the forest with white branches and deep red hues. Soaring. The silk cloth exclaimed confidently, good thing, it can improve cultivation and nourish divine souls. If you eat it, you will at least ascend to the level of a spiritual immortal. The cultivation level in the immortal realm is generally divided into 3 levels, from top to bottom. Heaven, earth, and spirit, with further division into upper, middle, and lower levels. The cultivation of Mahayana in the lower realm ascends to the immortal realm, and the immortal spirit in the ascending pool takes off its mortal bones and reshapes its roots to enter the realm of spiritual immortality. Spiritual immortality is only the beginning of true immortality. The light little Yuanying's level is also far away from the lower level of the spirit fairy. As long as you take this essence of sunlight and the rainbow of the sky and the heaven, you can at least achieve the body of the spirit fairy. She has the immortal cultivation technique given by the silk cloth, and it's only a matter of time before she can achieve spiritual immortality. But since she encountered heavenly materials and earthly treasures, why not take this shortcut? The silk cloth urged Qing to collect it, but Qing hesitated and looked at the lake surface. The treasure at the top of the tree was eye-catching, but the lake water in this area made her feel even more palpitated. Her heart was so palpitated that even though she knew that the rosy clouds and rainbow lights were rare, she didn't want to pick them. "What are you waiting for?" urged the silk cloth. At this moment, Qing's face changed, his body pulled out and fell with a whoosh, and he half fell into a pile of lake stones by the water's edge. His head shrank and his color changed, instantly turning into a light brown-gray stone that remained motionless, just like the lake stones. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Immortals. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Immortals. As her cultivation improves, her ability to foresee danger becomes stronger and stronger. And with the love of heaven, she comes with invisibility skills. As long as she doesn't use spiritual power, she can blend perfectly with the surrounding environment. Even divine consciousness cannot easily detect her. Silk Cloth was very clear about Qing's ability and fell silent. After a full 3 minutes, the air in the small secret realm twisted and 2 slightly disheveled figures fell in. Qing, disguised as a stone, carefully glanced over and saw that the attire of this man and woman was clearly different from the style of the 3 tribes in the Xiaoli realm. She was certain that the objects they were wearing and the weapons they were holding were not the same as those in the Xiaoli realm. They are immortals. His heart, as steady as a stone, almost jumped up, and Qing quickly steadied himself. His mind shifted for several seconds before he quickly glanced back. She wants to try whether her invisibility aura is useful for immortals. Not found. At first glance, I still didn't notice. Take another look and still haven't noticed. She tried to gaze at those 2 people, her gaze fluttering like a butterfly, unable to stare fixedly. The 2 of them were still unaware, but it is possible that they were too excited to notice the rosy shadows and rainbow lights. Qing calmly watched as the 2 of them held hands and flew to the top of the forest diagonally opposite each other. They each took out jade bottles that were almost an arm long to collect the glow and rainbow, and then fell to the ground, looking very happy. "A faint regret, my dear, it didn't fall into my own hands." Unexpectedly, the next second a sudden mutation occurred, and the male fairy suddenly locked his throat. The female fairy took the treasure and put it away on her own. I don't know what they were talking about, but the female fairy was in tears. Qing felt a chill in his heart and instantly raised his guard against immortals by 12 levels. Just waiting for her sympathy for the fleeting beauty, the situation over there has changed again. The male immortal who was about to silence suddenly let out a scream, and his whole body burst into a mist of blood. Strangely, the blood mist bloomed in mid-air and did not fall, but was sucked and swallowed by a scorpion beast with moth wings. The scorpion beast has a head and tail that are over a foot long. Judging from its position, it seems to have emerged from the body of a fairy. The fairy calmly tidied up her makeup, picked up the items dropped by the fairy, and it seemed that even from such a distance, one could see the decisive and merciless mockery on her face. Her vigilance towards the immortal world and immortals directly filled 100 squares. Qing remained motionless, waiting for the fairy to search through the secret realm and leave regretfully. She remained motionless, waiting for the fairy to kill her before leaving. I waited for a long time this time, but the fairy didn't come back. The sense of danger dissipated before she emerged from her disguise. That's Yuchong, a branch of Yubeast. Silk Cloth took the initiative to explain her confusion. Qing was surprised and said, "Isn't it Gu?" Jubu said, "No. It's easy to learn how to control insects, but it's difficult to control them. The cultivation of Gu in the Xiaoli world is actually more similar to that of insects. If you care about Gu, forget it, you don't have the qualifications, you don't need to understand it. But Hun Wan can do it. By the way, when you go back, you can help me teach Gu techniques to Hunwan. Hu Qing immediately exploded and said, my daughter doesn't learn those dirty things. Haha. Silk Cloth sneered, can you manage it? Hu Qing remained silent. She didn't let Hunwan learn Buddhism, and couldn't resist his uncle, who was a monk, secretly teaching him. Never mind, my daughter has grown up and has her own path to take. She didn't ask about raising insects anymore, flew up and around the lake, looking up and down at the water surface. I told you to collect the rosy shadows and rainbow lights first, said the silk cloth regretfully. Hu Qing pressed his head and feet against the water surface and said nonchalantly, that's not important. Fortunately, I didn't go to collect it, otherwise the two of them wouldn't have found me when they came in. Do you think it's in the water? Said the silk cloth, who chuckled lightly and said, have you noticed the problem with this water surface? What? Silk Cloth didn't notice anything, but he firmly believed that if there was a problem with Hu Qing's statement, then there must be a problem. You have exerted great power in the Xiaoli realm. If the heavenly way wants to reward you, it will definitely not fail. Hu Qing also firmly believed that because she had received the apocalypse. Strangely speaking, she was contracted by a divine beast cub, who is a legendary gold-swallowing beast. Originally, she was not in a hurry to go to the immortal realm, but the golden-swallowing beast urged her, so she had to come to Tianen continent alone to explore the way. On a quiet night one day, her consciousness was completely empty, and suddenly a fire burst out, jumping back and forth as if guiding her in the direction. As an alchemist, the longing for good spiritual fire has a long history. She has no reason not to believe that this is God's reward and fulfillment for herself. She came here after a long journey of hard work and hardships. The lake is very round, almost circular. The water surface has an arc, and it is slightly higher in the middle. Is that right? Exclaimed the silk cloth. Hu Qing was very certain. She went into the water and circled around the bottom a few times. The bottom of the lake was very clean, with only fine sand and no water plants growing, let alone small fish or shrimp. From the edge to the depths, the angle at which the bottom of the lake tilts down can be described as smooth, as if it has been carefully polished, which reminds Hu Qing of a word. Divine craftsmanship. Silk cloth. Although it's neat and unsightly, I'm pretty sure it's naturally generated. Hu Qing said, so, this lake water is actually a ball. Silk cloth. It feels like something is not quite right. Did you cut half of the ball? Its water surface is also a sphere, although it's not very visible, it is. Do you think there's a problem with this water? Said the silk cloth to herself. Hu Qing said, ball spotlight. She stood at the bottom of the water and looked towards the shore, feeling that the sunlight outside was even more dazzling through the water. As the water swayed, the forest looked like colorful eyelashes. She looked deeper into the water, and the neat bottom of the lake looked like some hot ball falling into the ice cream and leaking out. She wanted to eat ice cream and felt inexplicably hot in the water. Go take a look, don't you think it's beneath me? Hu Qing said. That fairy also came down to have a look and didn't find anything unusual. I'm not her, I'm lucky. With a kick, he quickly sneaked towards the center of the lake. Silk cloth rolled her eyes and her face was so big. The middle of the lake was quite deep, and Hu Qing silently calculated the distance. Surprised, he said to Silk Cloth, do you know that the bottom of the lake is a standard hemisphere? Silk Cloth. Oh, so what? Hu Qing said, what a handsome gourd, can we take it with us? Who? Am I a ladybug? As long as you can dig it out, as long as there's enough space, this lake doesn't even have a live shrimp, it's perfect for your space, said the silk cloth. Hu Qing has space, in the sea of consciousness, it is a fragment of the immortal treasure space and cannot enter living creatures. She knew that there were still no love threads, blood demon beads, and demon imperial orders in the sea, all of which were discarded immortal weapons. To put it another way, her brain is rotten, she's just picking up scraps. Oh, there are still two big shots living in her space. A big shot is an unborn egg, and its elders are sealed sinners in the thunderland of the Xiaoli realm. When they die, they entrust their orphans and their souls are already shattered. The unidentified giant beast forced Qing to make a contract, mainly recognizing the egg, and the contract was naturally terminated when Qing escorted him to the immortal realm. As an exchange, he imposed an invisible restriction on Qing's body. Once, the dragon clan used dragon beads to search Qing's entire body and divine soul, but her origin and knowledge of the sea were never discovered. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Blazing Sun Inflammation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Blazing Sun Inflammation. The other big shot is the gold-swallowing divine beast. I don't know how to wander into Xiaoli's realm, carrying a whole secret realm filled with mineral resources to make its bottle. The golden-swallowing divine beast also contracted Qing, connecting his mining nest to Qing's space and living in her sea of consciousness. Later, for some unknown reason, Huan, the daughter of Qing, caught his eye and followed him without revealing his identity or relationship. That is to say, Qing carried two ancestors on his back. If either of these two little ancestors is not good, she will not be good. So she couldn't refuse the demands of the two little ancestors. To go to the immortal realm is the command to devour the golden divine beast. That's why she came to Tianen continent to explore the way. Fortunately, these two little ancestors rarely interfered with her, so she was taken for granted. Moreover, she didn't need to feed any eggs or beasts, which was much easier to serve than her daughter Huan when she was young. Daughters can take a lot of trouble. Speaking of which, the bottom of the lake in the standard hemisphere made Qingxin tempted and wanted to own it, but even though she was tempted, she still remembered her goal. To give herself a spiritual fire from heaven. The bottom of the lake was still clean fine sand, and Qing took out a high-level escape talisman to dive down without being blocked. At the same time, he released his divine consciousness and searched around. The stealth is not obstructed, it's a normal sand layer, soil layer, and rock layer. In such a deep place, there are no more plant roots, and the inside is very clean. So, what about spiritual fire? Qing dug through the underground of the vast lake like a mole rat, but he didn't know how deep he was diving and found nothing. Feeling depressed, he returned to the water and wiped his face, saying, "God won't play with me, will he? Heaven probably doesn't have this leisure, it wouldn't look up to you so much," said the silk cloth objectively and impartially. Qing said, "With the silk cloth around, she will never float." So, there isn't. Is it in the sky? Qing looked up at the sky and said, "Is there still another dimension of space?" Her gaze wandered between the sun, the lake, and the forest. The soaring Inhumanity is a combination of the essence of sunlight and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Not to mention the spiritual energy, it can condense the soaring Inhumanity, indicating that the essence of sunlight in this small space is very rich. Just now, she felt the sunlight in the lake water more intense than outside. Yes, the sphere can condense light. Where does the condensed light project? How despicable that one's physics is nothing. Who would have thought that knowledge that cannot be used in modern times would actually be useful in the realm of cultivation? If she had to start over again, she would have been studying hard from birth, never wasting a minute or a second. Xiao Bu, help me find spatial traces. I'm just a receiver, sighed the silk cloth. Please beg the heavens, and I'll show you the way. Pu Tong, who lightly knelt down and slid his hands, touching his forehead and saying, "Dad." Silk cloth. Let's just say, kneeling so silky, it's the first time in my life I've seen you. After about a minute of touching the ground with his forehead, who lightly bounced and said brightly, "It's right in the center of the lake." Did the heavenly Tao really tell you? Kneeling down is so effective, exclaimed the silk cloth in shock. What are you saying? Qing scolded and sneered, "I have sensed the fire spiritual power in my body." Did you sense it? How can't you sense it underground now? Can't the fairy sense it better than you? Exclaimed Jubu with a chuckle. So, it's still heaven to open your eyes. Qing clasped his hands and said devoutly to the sky, thank you, Dad. Swim towards the place you sense in the diving pool. Why do you like to call yourself Dad? Said Jubu in confusion. Qing said, you don't understand. These two words represent the deepest affection that comes from the bottom of my heart, the most devout, the most respectful, the most convincing, and the most so on. My heart, only these two words can express it. The most important thing is to act coquettishly like this, without face or skin. You can advance, attack or retreat, and defend. Dad was happy when she missed her fingertips, but when he was unhappy, he told her to go, so she agreed. We all rely on God to live our lives without shame. The silk cloth was a mess. Could these two words really have some incredible magic? When you encounter any difficulties, try calling yourself Dad. Qing stood still and reached the position of lingua. In front of her was only the lake water, with no visible head or feet. The spiritual fire is here, in another space. Thunder Dragon Arm. Electric light rushed through, and the right arm suddenly became thick and sturdy. The dragon scales were hard, and the right hand formed a claw with a sharp tip. It fiercely tore at the clear and lifeless lake water, and thunder and lightning carried the mighty golden fire spiritual power to impact. She only has a basic cultivation level and does not have the power of space. Of course, Lei Long's arm does not have the ability to tear open space. She's just gambling that God will definitely help her. In front of him was empty, and the weight of all the lake water behind him suddenly weighed down. Qing couldn't control himself and fell forward. In his field of vision, the blue and green water colors quickly receded, replaced by a brilliant yellow. Light, fire. Found it. The scorching sun, exclaimed the silk cloth, cursing profusely in her heart. You may really be God's daughter. Qing had already covered his eyes and said, ah, I'm blind. I didn't lie, she's really blind. In the moment she entered, an indescribable bright light shone straight into her eyes, and she immediately felt the outer layer of her eyeball melting. Scary, she wants to become a blind cultivator. Quickly turning his back, he used his spiritual power to repair the injury. The spiritual power surged out of the meridians and nourished the eyeball through the subtle veins. It was then melted by the powerful bright light, one after another. I've forgotten all about it. Hurry up, fix your eyesight, said the silk cloth anxiously. What? Stuffed in her mind was a cultivation technique with text and images, and the silk cloth urged her to quickly follow the posture on the pattern. Qing was obedient and effortless, putting on a strange flying face and trying to raise it before reading the text. At first glance, his face turned black and he said, I don't know. It's not her fault for being illiterate. Although she had learned about the cultural knowledge of Xiaoli realm for a long time, during her million-year exile in Xiaoli realm, the development of cultural aspects inevitably deviated and disconnected from the mainstream of the immortal realm, and it is normal for her writing to undergo changes. I saw those words flashing continuously, quickly becoming the words of Xiaoli Jia that she knew. I've made some changes for you, but you need to quickly learn the script of the fairy world. You can't order a dish in the fairy world and have me translate it for you, can you? Said the silk cloth, who lightly nodded, and his mind was already immersed in the text. This is a specialized technique for refining the eyes. The body is the best tool. There is no other object as exquisite, magical, and effortless as the body. Even if it is a vital organ, it does not have comprehensive bodily functions. And the body is the carrier of divine souls and cultivation. Who would be willing to abandon the body until there is no way out? The most common way to refine the body is through physical training. In addition, there are some special techniques that can be targeted to enhance certain abilities. For example, the sense of smell of the herb collector and the hearing of the animal tamer. This kind of cultivation method is very niche in the Xiaoli realm, because the cultivation methods possessed by the Xiaoli realm cannot be considered superior. The benefits of improving one's cultivation level and promotion are greater than those of practicing those techniques. She was useless to herself, so she never had a crush. At this moment, there was scorching sun, and when the silk cloth stood up, she remembered this benefit and immediately dug out the cultivation technique for her eyes. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Reasons for extraordinary events. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Reasons for Extraordinary Events. Rich Jia Fong in the special interactive chapter of the old book, Zombies Not Cultivating Immortals. The huge transparent balloon slowly rises and sinks in mid-air, rotating and rotating like a celestial body. Each balloon has a scene inside, and the people in the scene are different. Under the transparent balloon, there is a thin and invisible thread entangled, and the other end of the thread is the hand of the onlookers. The gourd-eating crowd lay in various positions holding melons, and at first glance, it was a leisurely group of people who were bored to the extreme and had to find some fun to pass the time. There are men and women, big and small. The only little boy on the scene who was empty-handed repeatedly complained, "Auntie, I've grown up and can now deploy the system." The angry voice of the child only made the merciless deity Yi Shi turn his head and say, "Ah! Ah! Minors are not allowed to use the system, this is a dangerous item." The little boy said, "It's just a matter of choosing a partner in the world and making a little fuss. I won't go there in person." "Auntie, if you throw out all the foreign guests who brought this thing, the thing you made will definitely not be in danger." Yi Shi waved his hand and said, "It's no use flattering me. If you have the ability, let your father or mother give it to you." The child was about to fight again when someone on the other side exclaimed, "Mom, I can't do it here anymore. It's the end of the world again." Yi Shi's head hurt, so he pulled his fingers. Before he could carefully examine the small world of Long Xiaoya's delivery system, Feng Xiaoxi beside him also called out, "Mom, I can't do it here either. They want to synthesize mutants. Take a look." Upon hearing the mutant, all the big and small ones gathered around and exclaimed in an empty voice, "What's all that's on your mind? How many are you? Are you going to end the world?" Yeshi had a headache and said, "I just watched a movie, it's all fake, fake. The world consciousness must be simulated. It's impossible to come true. Forget it, I'll handle it. This universe excludes true zombie viruses, and the so-called apocalypse and zombies that have emerged are at best highly imitated and cannot become climate. The words are spoken in this way, but the disasters and injuries suffered by the creatures on it are real. Xiao Bao Bao. Destroy the realm. Night Creek. Otherwise. Let them tinker and cause countless disasters. Instead of causing them to suffer from chronic suicide, why don't I drain all the energy there in one go, extract soul power, wash it clean, and then reincarnate?" She didn't even notice the heavenly way of the small world when she made a move, and was instantly relieved. Xiao Baobao nodded and said, "I'm just reminding you that if you try more times, that person will definitely talk to you." There was another headache, and Yi Shi supported his head and walked out. Wu Gui followed and said, "I'll go with you." Without waiting for the two of them to reach the door, the wind swept over their heads and the huge roof was overturned. Subconsciously, everyone looked up and saw a familiar blue figure suddenly bowing its head in unison and disappearing. The Night Creek stiffened and said, "Hee hee, hee hee." Bamboo fell and the nearby roof was smashed to pieces. The Night Creek moved its lips and endured. Zhuzi stared at her and said, "What's stuffed in here?" With a cold skull, Yeshi smiled awkwardly and affectionately, "So, I didn't expect the world consciousness to come up with any of my tiny absurd ideas." Zhuzi snorted and said, "Thanks to what you have given me, I have witnessed all kinds of apocalypse." The Night Creek was even more awkward, who could have imagined? She has been officially recognized by this universe and has become the deity of the outside world. She has also been open and honest with her past friends, letting them know about things outside of this universe. Even if she is not honest, they will gradually know because the outside world has actually realized all the real, false, seen, heard, and thought things in her mind. I hate watching too many movies. Damn it, the apocalypse in movies has its own charm. She has secretly handled more than 10 of them with bamboo on her back and is still constantly giving birth. Juzi said, "You are the god, and the outside world instinctively gives birth to a small world with your thoughts. Don't you have a number in your heart?" Wu Goe was unwilling and said, "Yi Shi is not a saint. What's wrong with something bad in his mind?" Night Creek Lament looked over and said, "What's wrong with me? Juzi. It's a mess, no wonder people in your world have no way out." "Don't talk nonsense, they're doing well," Yi Shi said in frustration. The new humans evolved from zombies have risen with their home planet and nailed the old humans to the pillar of shame. Juzi ignored her and shook his sleeves as he walked towards the center to look at the light balloons. Everyone silently made both sides dare not speak. Kong Kong secretly said to Prince Liao, "How do I feel like he's getting stronger? Do you think we can beat him together?" The youngest son looked up and said, "Mother, do you have such ambitious ambitions?" Wang Ziliao sighed in his heart and said, "The credit for saving the world is certainly stronger. Let's put it all together. Don't embarrass yourself." Sigh, empty air sighs, pitiful for myself and also pitiful for the Night Creek. They have become gods and are still oppressed by the mountains. Juzi's gaze wandered around all the balloons, some normal and some bad. He glanced at Long Xiaoya and Feng Xiaoxi, and the two grandsons buried their heads so that they couldn't see their faces. They vomited in their hearts, "It's not our fault." With a flick of his finger, a balloon drifted towards him, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief when they saw the scene inside. Feng Tuqiang smiled and said, "There's no problem with this small world." Bamboo's fingers lightly caressed the balloon, and the scene inside was like water pumping wildly. In a moment, he looked through the details and was surprised and laughed, "It's all your bloodline. Did you intentionally come together?" Seeing him smile, everyone breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Xiao Baobao hurriedly said, No, it's all a coincidence. We also discovered it by chance, so we paid more attention to it. Don't worry, we are just observing and will not interfere recklessly." Everyone nodded their heads, absolutely not doing anything wrong. Juzi looked at Xiao Baobao, Jin Feng, Shi Shaoer, Kong Kong, Feng Tu, and Wu Gui one by one, and finally said, "Your descendants are very different from you." Everyone ha ha ha, "I don't know how many generations of bloodline it is, it's very small, of course different." "More lovely than you," said Juzi calmly. Everyone. If it weren't for being unable to beat the old guy, everyone would have risen up and started beating him up. "Is this Hu Qing also from the end of the world?" Zhu Zi asked to Yi Shi. Yeshi nodded and said, "I have sent someone to guide there, it won't collapse." Juzi asked, "Is she related to you?" "How could that be possible?" Yeshi smiled and said, "I happened to see it, giving her and another poor child a small chance. When others reincarnate in the next life, they can leave their bloodline, but she cannot. On the one hand, she is a zombie alienated and has long lost that ability. On the other hand, she is a deity and cannot have her own offspring. Fortunately, she herself is not persistent about these things. If not, then not. To be serious, Long Xiaoya and Feng Xiaoxi are not her children. Are not all living beings in the world transformed by the crystal nucleus her children? As for the opportunity to be carefree and warm, it was indeed given by her casually, and among them, the small stone that had become the heart of all worlds was also mixed in. Juzi nodded and said, "You need to cultivate your mind and don't think about all the chaos." Night Creek obediently admits its mistake. Juzi's face turned stern again and said, "Also, don't play with all sorts of things anymore, don't let all sorts of things mix in. Focused on swallowing the sky. Swallowing the sky and shivering. I understand. Yeshi said helplessly, Washen has also educated me. She also personally inspected and repaired the cosmic wall. Well, it's just that the walls of the universe are too broad, so Washen hasn't returned yet. The person did not come back, but the admonitions came from time to time. It seems like she made a big mistake, but it's clearly because the walls of the universe are thin. Bamboo just left satisfied, and everyone took a breath and gathered around to look at the balloon. I thought Bamboo would destroy them, fortunately. Connected to the immortal realm, it's pretty good, it depends on where they can go. Fill in the previous pitfalls, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. Luck. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Luck. Fortunately for you, this scorching sun is a newly born young fire. Its light is just like the light of the rising sun, moist but not dry, and it is perfect for refining the eyes. Silk Cloth said happily, after refining the eyes, you can see a wider field of vision, break through barriers, and monsters have nowhere to hide. Upon hearing the last sentence, Qing felt that he had entered the journey to the west to cultivate his fiery eyes and golden eyes. It's not that easy. To reach the level I mentioned, you need to accumulate and persist for a long time. In short, you should first moisten your eyes and open the blocked areas inside. Taking advantage of this spiritual fire reaching the highest yang, you can shine the sea of consciousness again to stabilize your soul. He said it simply, but Qing executed it with difficulty. Just opening the meridians around her eyes is enough for her to die. It hurts too much. In the past, whether it was the Golden Fire secret technique, Spring God technique, or body refining technique, no matter how much one explored meridians, they were far from their eyes. Those techniques have no specific requirements for the eye area, or for the eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. Eyes, as long as you can see; ears, as long as you can hear; as for the mouth, just say it. The improvement of martial arts is about cultivation, isn't everything else important? So Qing Kai realized that he still had undeveloped wilderness on his body. It really hurts to develop it, she was trembling with pain. Especially the cultivation requires her to use her spiritual power to guide the light spiritual power step by step according to the roadmap. Her dual spiritual power of gold and fire is in harmony with light, and the thunder dragon arm is also helping her. Thunder and light are both from the sky and are close to each other. Under the traction of three types of energy, the proud light spiritual power was like a merry princess, sitting on the phoenix carriage crying and refusing to leave. The genie way in front of him, who was flooded with water, was chopping and chopping with a large knife. Countless blades were inserted, stirred, flipped, and cut in both eye sockets, and tears flowed like a river, just sprinkled salt on the wound. Of course, Qing will not give up. The pain is already painful, and there must be gains. Moreover, she has to persevere until the end when it hurts so much. You must get the maximum benefit. Jubu likes Qing, he is very timid when he is timid, and very tough when he shouldn't be timid. The delicate princess finally got off the sedan chair, and her delicate little feet stomped on the door of her husband's house with a loud roar, tears and blood streaming down her face. With a loud bang, my little foot stepped on it again, tears dried up and I bled. With a single kick, 2 streams of blood couldn't stop. Qing was trembling all over with sobs, and the silk cloth comforted her. It's not dazzling now, is it? By the way, now her eyes are all bright red, and she never wants to see this color again in her lifetime. Take advantage of this momentum and work hard to overcome the obstacle of the sea wall. Silk cloth refers to the barrier between Shangdanshan and Shihai. Qing almost spewed out a mouthful of old blood, breaking through the barrier. She hasn't even explored the Dantian area much. This is no different from flying directly from primitive society to high-rise buildings. Shut up, I'll do it myself, she said to herself, ignoring it and concentrating her whole mind on her eyes. Silk cloth shut up, but her heart was both anxious and worried. No one else, scorching sun. Looking at all the immortal realms, it can be ruled out. If anyone finds out that Qing has contracted scorching sun, then Qing really has no way to survive. I don't know why the heavens happen to cause such trouble for her. With 100 twists and turns in her mind, silk cloth made up her mind. Although she had always looked down upon Qing, she must be diligent when she arrived in the immortal world. There was no news of the scorching sun that could be leaked. After Qing subdues the spiritual fire, he must tell her well that even Hunyuan cannot reveal this matter. Hunyuan is reliable, but the large family of Chaohua sect cannot guarantee it. As the silk cloth pondered how to conceal this opportunity, Qing hissed and finally opened up the meridians in the eye area according to the technique. Her two eyes were like two blood curtains hanging, and her eyelashes were soaked in blood, swaying and swaying. Spiritual power mixed with light and spiritual power plays in the two areas, causing a great movement of heaven and earth. After getting used to the operation of light power, it actively forces the spiritual power away, and the roasted energy circulates in the fine and dense network, roaring and rushing towards each other in the direction of the big network. I don't know how many times I rushed, but with a clang, the two finally broke through the final barrier and joined together. At the same time, a loud roar of blood roared out from both sides of Qing's nostrils, and the spiritual power in the dantian rushed in and out of emergency blood. The innocent appearance of the original life tool White Kiss and the Thunder Dragon, Snake, and Dragon protected the equally innocent sleeping little Yuanying in the dantian spiritual power vortex, avoiding and playing, completely unaware of the owner's sorrow. The scorching energy flowed between the eyes on both sides, causing slight pain and happiness. The strong force from the sun destroys impurities and old cells in the body, stimulating the emergence of newer and better cells. The old and dilapidated houses are demolished in the front, and a spacious and bright palace is built in the back. That's right, the palace. Her feeling at this moment was like being in the pinnacle of a palace built with fresh sunlight. To be precise, it was her two eyes, as if they had come to the cleanest snow on a high snow mountain and built a palace with the clearest sunlight. Cold and hot, as if smelling the sweetness of snow. In my ear, I could hear the silk cloth saying, "Great, the technique has been running smoothly. Now slowly, I am introducing the light spiritual power into the dantian, merging with your spiritual power, and after running for a long time, I will rush to the sea of consciousness." Qing followed the instructions of the silk cloth, and at the same time, a small amount of light spiritual power separated from both sides of the eye area, flowing parallel down to the dantian. He spun inside the dantian and flowed out from the other end. White Kiss and Thunder Dragon escorted the golden light spiritual power of Yuaning Mu in, and then watched them go out. Shameful saliva flowed from the corners of their mouths, as if they were eating well. The mixed spiritual power circulates once and returns to the eyes. Qing Jing is about to start the second cycle when a sudden mutation occurs. Suddenly, all the light spiritual powers in both eye domains rush upwards together. Bang! Thousands of troops and horses crossed the Yen Mountains. The tremendous momentum and the feeling above made Hu lightly and fiercely fall backwards. After entering, she was stimulated by the strong light and turned around before she could see clearly, so she had no idea about the situation in this small space. Ju Bu stared intently at her practice without paying close attention. At this moment, she looked around and was shocked to find that the pure condensation of the sun's power was on the head. The golden to white color filled her field of vision, but a warm and watery red appeared in it, which was the true body of the scorching sun. It's just that it has just been born and doesn't have much power yet, it's this warm red. At this moment, Qing's target for falling backwards was clearly this young fire. But even the smallest spiritual fire is a fire, let alone a fire generated by the sun. It's strange that Qing won't be burned to ashes by flying straight up like this. Originally, it was supposed to gradually introduce the light spiritual power to make it familiar with Qing's spiritual power and become closer, and then slowly map the spiritual fire, but now it's too late. Under the urgent pressure of the silk cloth, Qing's body stretched out and turned into large thin gauze scarves, enveloping him completely. He is an immortal, at least he can block it. After Qing's fall, she quickly reacted and caught the anomaly. She angrily shouted, "What are you doing? Are you letting me die?" End of this chapter. Chapter 6. For Troublers, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. For Troublers, spiritual power flowed into the sea of consciousness, and the terrifying suction made Qing's meridians and dantian tremble slightly. There was also a wave of suction that directly followed the light spiritual power towards the spiritual fire. The sea is being contested from all directions, with space, blood demon beads, unrequited emotions, and magical imperial orders being divided and consumed. There is also the power of the divine soul to recognize the sea and water, and to stir up towering waves requires a share of the pie. Qingjiang was about to sneer and say, "Let me die." The sea happily piled up layers of snow-white waves, resembling coquettishness, while space, the bloodthirsty beads, the heartless silk, and the demon emperor's order conveyed the same meaning. Hungry, thirsty Qing. She suspected that everything in her mind was not serious. Is it really good to know that they are incomplete, that they are eager to make up for themselves, but have no regard for the safety of her as the head of household? For big sucking garbage. I don't listen, at least there was the reliable silk cloth, but he also sweated profusely and said, "Sorry for the trouble." The four of them are clearly trying to bring the scorching sun directly into the sea of consciousness. Your physical strength is not even that of a spirit fairy. Absorb the spirit stone and use all the techniques. I hope God will bless you to successfully overcome this calamity. Qing's face changed. Spiritual fire is not easy to subdue. Many years ago, she had the idea of subduing the spiritual fire and had a thorough understanding of this knowledge. According to her conditions, it is best to gather the spiritual fire in the elixir field, or somewhere on her body, or use tools, and wait until it fully integrates with the spiritual fire before transferring to the sea of consciousness. This is the safest way. Otherwise, the spiritual fire is difficult to tame, and directly entering the divine soul is the end result of losing one's soul. Now it's good. For out-of-stock people in their minds are setting fire to her in order to make up for themselves and not care about her life or death. When she dies, can they take her inheritance with them to fulfill others? Don't even think about it. She immediately crossed her legs and her body's techniques were running wildly. The spring divine technique for cultivating spiritual souls, the golden fire secret technique for cultivating spiritual roots, and the body refining technique for cultivating bodies are all pushed to the extreme. As soon as Lingshifu took it out of the space, it was immediately absorbed and vaporized into powder, which was then melted by the strong golden light. What Qing couldn't see was that she, completely wrapped in silk, fell into a brilliant golden sea of light, almost facing a red flame. The flame head of the flame flickered and flickered, as if curious about her and didn't escape. A thin red thread was pulled out from the fire and passed through her right eye through the silk cloth, penetrating into her sea of consciousness. Just a thin thread, but it made the silk feel the pain of 10 suns burning up close at the same time, unbearable. For the sake of Hucking, he cannot retreat. Qing did not feel the same pain, she only felt a sharp pain in her right eye in an instant, a very brief pain that disappeared without her shouting. She thought it was her mental illusion. But she could see clearly in the sea, as the waves fought against the sky, occupying the four corners separately. Invisible energy emanated from the space, the heartless thread, the blood Sha pearl, and the demon emperor's body. The four energy pillars intersected over the sea, and the spiritual power from outside fell on it, turning into large, shallow gold and deep red clouds that churned and flowed towards the surroundings of the sea. Gradually, I realized that the sea was covered with a sea of clouds, which became increasingly thick and dense, pressing directly against the sea surface. The snow-white waves rolled up and splashed on the clouds, hot and cold hitting each other, and raindrops falling. The rain fell on the sea surface, and the waves suddenly became quiet. A contented cat lay down calmly. The rain interweaves into a fine rain curtain, and the sea is smashed into strings of water splashes, singing a cheerful song. The rain is falling more and more, and the clouds are becoming thinner and thinner. However, in the middle where the clouds are flourishing, the warm red gradually outlines. Silk Cloth breathed a sigh of relief. It really brought in the scorching sun. God bless. Dad. In the space where the essence of sunlight converges, the red young fire is still flickering across from Qing, and it is unknown whether it knows its body is shrinking. Perhaps it had never seen anyone before, nor was it aware of the dangers of human nature. The little thing was not afraid of this strange intruder, full of curiosity. It took the initiative to approach Qing, and when it saw this strange intruder motionless, it even reached out its red little hand to touch it. Qing remained motionless, as if it were a stone. The little thing became even more curious and jumped onto her face. Through the silk cloth, the flame's little hand slapped her cheek with a slight crisp sound. Inexplicably, Qing felt as if he had heard a baby-like laughter. Face-playing games are the favorite of little babies. She didn't know what she was thinking, so she instinctively transformed the sea water into a snow-white hand, gently caressing the shape of the sun that had been outlined but not fully filled in the sky above the sea. Beyond the sea, Qing remained motionless, but a gentle curve curved from the corner of his mouth. Ha! Yohua seemed to have noticed the curve, and a small ball approached, staring through the silk cloth for a long time. There was a phantom sound, and Xiaohua used his claws to slap and slap. With a painful cheek and a twitch at the corner of his mouth, Qingxin said, "Little bear." The flame gently caressed the corner of her mouth, and the silk cloth alone endured the extreme high temperature. If the young flame didn't move away, I would melt. At this moment, the scorching young flame suddenly discovered something even more fun. It finally discovered the red thread that had been drawn from its body. The flame's little hand tugged at it and swooshed down along the thread. Qingshi let out a loud roar from the sea, and the surging waves turned into steam just a second before reaching the sky. In the explosion of white mist, the four corners of the space, the heartless thread, the blood Sha pearl, and the demon emperor ordered Qi to roll backwards in a disheveled state. The tender red flames outside suddenly turned into a fierce appearance as they entered, and the raging fire spread its teeth and claws over the sea of consciousness. Obviously, the scorching sun found itself in a place that was not good for it. This place seemed to be full of danger and malice to it, and it was going to burn. Burn everything around it, burn all the places that imprisoned it. The Hu outside started to heat up with a gentle roar, and there was a sizzling sound on his head. His hair couldn't withstand the high temperature and burned away, and then the meat aroma emanated, making him almost cooked. Jubu was shocked, but he was powerless because he was also burning and his mind was a bit restless. Qing watched as half of the sea water in Shihai suddenly fell, and exclaimed in fear, "My goodness!" With this shout, a burst of golden light shot out from the bottom of the sea towards the scorching sun. That's the golden light fell smoothly on the scorching sun, and immediately the sun was scorching. It then calmed down like a sedative, and the massive flame body contracted until it contracted into a round, rosy ball. Qing also seems to have taken a box of Hu perfume, which is full of vitality and calm. Four things that caused trouble got up from the corner and all at once said in their hearts, "Ah! Fortunately, they have merit." That is the merit obtained by Qing summoning the Ghost Gate and teaming up with Shui Xian to send the ghosts of the three tribes into the underworld to eliminate a major disaster. I can't bear to use it on weekdays, but now I'm all flying to suit the scorching sun. Feeling her merits dwindling, Qingxin felt heartbroken, but fortunately, she was left with a handful, at least getting a spiritual fire. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Birds, Inhumanity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Birds. Inhumanity. The silk cloth outside who had escaped a disaster shouted, "Be careful." Qing didn't have time to pull out his thoughts, only heard a loud bang in his ears, and then his body lightened, as if he had been thrown up. It's strange, she no longer feels the scorching sensation, only feels an unusual coolness in her body. The silk cloth wrapped around her was loosened and then tightened and wrapped around her wrist. The silk cloth said urgently. "The scorching sun has recognized you. The essence of the sun that gave birth to it is not reconciled and needs to vent its anger." Upon hearing this, Qing felt a little guilty. If the child she had worked hard to conceive was robbed, she would definitely use a knife to kill. Her body rolled uncontrollably, and in her dizziness, she heard a clicking sound, as if it was a movement of shattered space. "It's not going to kill me, is it?" "I don't think so. You've been admitted to the scorching sun, it's just getting angry." Qing felt the same way. "I don't feel burned at all." Jubu said, "You have a good attitude, let it vent enough and then it will disperse." Qing was taken aback and dispersed. What a pity. This is pure energy from the sun. If it were to be used for refining weapons, pick the watermelon and let go of the sesame seeds. If you force yourself to absorb them, you may lose both sides. Chuanbu felt her thoughts. After a pause, she said, "Maybe this essence of the sun can breed another spiritual fire if it falls somewhere else." Qing understood that one should not be greedy, but rather leave blessings for future generations. "You still understand these things," said the silk cloth. "If you don't like what you learned before, don't listen," said Jubu calmly. Qing said, "I like it. I've been doing this all along, haven't I? I used to pick spiritual plants and never stopped rooting." She smiled and said, "I thought you learned from me." Jubu. "Hello big face, I'll learn from you." From an invisible angle, a huge and intense golden flame burst through the space and shot rapidly into the sky, disappearing. The sound and energy fluctuations of the collapsed space behind startled several groups of people in the distance. The sound of rapid shooting was incessant, and 3 to 5 groups of people gathered from different directions, watching a small world collapse in front of them. In less than 3 to 5 breaths, the small space was completely devoured by the main space. They didn't even have the opportunity to take a closer look, let alone know what treasures had emerged here. Painful and heartbroken. Someone looks at the sky, only to see the lazy white clouds. Where are there any traces of treasures? "Oh, come a step late." The crowd dispersed in silence. And the golden flame rampaged all the way, only wanting to burn the thief who stole its treasure to death. However, the scorching sun recognized her instinct to protect her. In addition to destroying her meridians and physical body, the golden flame could never take her life. Finally, after crossing several layers of different skies, it gave up and threw the person fiercely towards the next. Shu. Toku, Qing threw himself into a deep and bottomless blue. Caught off guard, choked on water and quickly closed his breath. Divine consciousness swept through the body and found that the body was severely damaged. The meridians are broken, and the acupoints on the elixir field burst open. The spiritual power is stagnant and cannot be mobilized for healing. The outer clothes were damaged, whether it was the outermost treasure clothes, shaky silk jackets, or protective underwear made of golden toad skin, they were all burnt out and washed clean a few times. Large area burns on the skin are actually best repaired. There is medicine in the space, and Shenshir took it out for oral application, then casually picked out a whole outfit and put it on. The rapids surged, and Qing, who had regained a trace of spiritual power through the pill, could not break free. He decided to follow the flow and focus on recuperating his injuries, while Jubu watched the movements of the sea bottom alone. Hopefully, they would not encounter any ferocious sea beasts. Perhaps Qing's good luck still lingered, drifting all the way. Although they couldn't make it to the sea, the journey was very peaceful, and the biggest creatures they encountered were just harmless schools of sea fish. On this day, Qing finally repaired the broken spider web meridians in his body and connected them to the elixir field. His spiritual power didn't have time to circulate for a full week, so his waist tightened and he was pulled up by a huge force. Her speed made it impossible for her to resist. With a sound of breaking water, she saw the mountains, the sea, and the sky in a daze. The thin fishing line was thrown into the air, spun a few times, and roared down. Qing was blinded by the wind and couldn't open his eyes. When Zhang opened his eyes, he saw a beautiful man's face on the opposite side. "Hey, is this a person?" Clunkling, Qing thought to himself, "This is not a human." Clunkling, the silk cloth said to herself, "Don't be caught burning under the scorching sun." The man scanned up and down at the person who caught the fish, and the fishing line coordinated to gently rotate the hook for half a day. "He's just a little baby, still seriously injured. Strange, how did people get here?" Qing was afraid that he would ask him something, and he was afraid that his small weight would not be able to fool the immortal in front of him. However, the man in front of me doesn't seem to have any curiosity. Fortunately, at a young age, the meat is also tender. Although it may not be as nourishing as dragon fish, it has a unique taste. So. Who panicked lightly. She saw the hard patch slowly growing on the man's wrist and didn't dare to think about his true identity. She urgently prayed, "Sir, I'm useful, I'm me. I'm an alchemist." The man was slightly surprised, as if wondering how a person could speak. He blinked his eyes and suddenly laughed wildly, "Haha, an alchemist. He's just a mortal immortal who isn't even a spirit fairy. He's like me, an alchemist. Little thing. We demons can't use the scrap metal that you guys make." Hanged by the fishing line and sent forward, Qingda was very anxious, as if he saw the next moment when he was ripped open and had his belly cut open. "Wait a minute, I can cook. I'm a chef. A famous chef." As soon as the forward movement stopped, the man's expression became thoughtful and he said, "The cook. This thing seems to be useful." Who lightly nodded and said, "Yes, yes, I am very useful." The man looked at her suspiciously and suddenly with a heavy aura, he said, "You didn't lie to me just to escape, did you?" Qing's body was in a squeezing pain, and the repaired meridians showed faint signs of rupture. He didn't dare to curse in his heart and nodded like pecking rice. "No, no, absolutely not. If you don't believe me, I'll show you now." As soon as the man's momentum subsided, he became unrestrained and said, "You dare not. I'll take you away." Let's go. Where are we going?" The next second, the man transformed into a huge ferocious bird, with a long cry of fear. He shook and shattered the green clouds, and a thin thread on his paw stretched straight. The other end of Qingxian's line was blown into rags, his waist was pulled, his heels were folded and he hit the back of his head. In his heart, there was a loud song. "The strong wind blows, the strong wind keeps blowing. This bird is very unmanned." Silk Cloth whispered, "Keep the scorching sun in our secret. He is a backless eagle with a cultivation level of at least earthly level." Divine Eagle. Silk Cloth. The kind that kills dragons and eats dragons. Qing said, "Why don't you say he's the king of Jinpeng?" Silk Cloth. There are also those in Jinpeng who can eat dragons and those who can eat dirt. Let's see which kind of bloodline. Wait. I'll communicate with you mentally, he won't notice, will he? No, unless he can sense your wild thoughts, said Jubu. What Jubu didn't say was that he suspected that the gold-swallowing divine beast or the egg had already provided Qing with higher level protection. Otherwise, with her cultivation as a little Yuaning who couldn't even cover the bottom of the bottle, it would be impossible for her secret to be hidden from the Tongbei divine eagle of the local product. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Making Dowry. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Making Dowry. Qing was pulled by this inhumane evil bird, and when she landed, she felt her scalp detach from her skull. She stood up numbly, trembling and trying to pull her ghostly long hair. But the people around her didn't place too much emphasis on her appearance, just like when someone goes to the market to buy a chicken, would they care about what hairstyle the chicken looks like? It is gorgeous and dazzling all around. It is full of glitter. It stings my eyes and makes me roast about the beauty of the little princess. There really lives a little princess here. The little princess, dressed in splendid fairy clothes and exquisite jewelry, ran over with the hem of her skirt in hand. When she saw Qing's mouth pull down, she felt disgusted and said, "It's so ugly. Qing. With your bird's aesthetic." She heard the beauties and maids around calling out Princess 10 and Third Prince. I didn't expect that she would first encounter someone with such a status when she entered the immortal world. According to the meaning of the silk cloth, she had a considerable background in carrying a divine eagle. Jubu said, "It depends on the number of their clan and the cultivation of the divine eagle king. I guess the lowest level of the divine eagle king is also a heavenly grade. Big head, how could I come across someone with such a status? A demon." His Royal Highness said, "You will get married the day after tomorrow. This person is a cook and happens to bring you along. They like to eat." Qing stood up honestly and bowed to Princess 10, thanking the fairy world for speaking the same way as Xiao Li's world. He sincerely said, "I am willing to go." The 10 princesses didn't look at her at all, only pursed their lips and looked unhappy, saying, "Third brother, I don't want to go." "You can tell your father, even if it's someone else. Don't act recklessly. Father has arranged 100-year marriage for you, and it is precisely because he calculated that your refining emotions and Wenting's trial intentions complement each other. However, 100-year marriage is just a promise. You really don't like to come back and marry whoever you want to marry." This conversation made Princess 10 blush and pout, while Qing was completely confused and didn't understand. "I'll explain to you later. Now, you need to survive and run back to the territory of the human race alive," said Jubu. Qing felt a headache. The 10th princess knew she couldn't escape resistance, so she called out in a low mood to take Qing to the kitchen to try her cooking skills. Qing followed 2 maidservants who were taller and more powerful than her in a daze, watching their bright feather jackets dancing with light and shadow along the way. Speaking of which, the people here dress more beautifully and have more romantic styles, with snow-white skin shining in the light clothing. Looking back at the 2 immortal men and women I saw in the scorching sun's secret realm before, their clothes were also bright. In comparison, the dressing style of Xiaoli Jia appeared very dull. This is the kitchen. The 10 princess likes to eat dim sum. You can use these ingredients to handle it yourself. The woman has a sweet voice and a sweet smile, but her gaze is emotionless, just like she looks at the yellow-footed chicken raised at home. "Sir, may I ask if Princess 10 prefers a strong or weak taste? Do you prefer sweet or salty?" 2 maids, one looking up at the sky and the other looking down at the ground. Who nodded and bowed, smiled lightly and gritted his teeth. "When I have a good temper, it's not because I know a bird." "What flavor does Tongbei Divine Eagle like?" asked Jinbu. This really caught the attention of Chuanbu. He knew that Tongbei Divine Eagle likes to eat meat, especially dragon meat. But what does dragon meat taste like? He's just a spirit, he never eats it. Qing let out a sigh in his heart and used his spiritual power to cleanse himself several times. He tied his sleeves high and cleaned his hands in the flowing pool several times. Seeing the 2 maids silently in the corner of his eye, he knew that they also used the flowing spring water to clean their hands. Turn around and face the ingredients hanging high in a large room, starting with those you know. In my mind, Hunwan used the opportunity of the Peach Immortal to hold a culinary book exhibition specifically for her, which opened up to the dessert and snack section. With more past events and less time, I have never focused on studying this, but now I am using it for emergency rescue. She first took a bucket of milk and quickly looked at their faces. To be honest, she was afraid that this milk was used by the 10 princesses to take a bath. So she used the milk from the bath to make food for her, and she might be chopped to death by them in minutes. Fortunately, their faces were the same. Hu breathed a slight sigh of relief. This is the kitchen, and the quality of the milk is like fairy milk. It cannot be a bathing product, can it? I took another jar of sweet and rich red bean fruits, which are also some ingredients in xiaolijia. They can be mixed with milk to make a frozen cake. Qing finally grinds the beans and fruits while quickly flipping through the cooking book in his mind, identifying the ingredients and processing methods in front of him as quickly as possible. The two maids watched coldly throughout the entire process, and surprisingly, they didn't say a word to each other. Are the rules strict or do they have a bad relationship? I will be here for a long time to come, and I must establish good relationships. Qing had an idea and took an extra portion of the dessert he had prepared on a lightweight and exquisite tray, presenting it to the two of them. He kindly said, "Please taste it, 2 adults, and see if it fits Princess Ten's usual appetite." Without moving, one of them said faintly, "No one is allowed to eat the dim sum of Princess Ten." Qing's smile remained unchanged, and he nodded and bowed, "I'm new here. I don't understand the rules here. I thought like us, someone had to try and make sure everything was correct before I dared to offer it. After all, if the boss is not satisfied, getting angry will first hurt the person who is close." Qing did not completely please, just pointed out that, "I may not be the only one who gets punished if the master is unhappy eating, so we are in the same camp." Unfortunately, both of them ignored her even when they raised their chins. Qing's dark energy grinds his teeth, pleasing and threatening doesn't work, bird's head. Dozens of snacks were served, and Hu rubbed his hands lightly as he stood 10 meters away from the table, crouching and looking up at the slow tasting of the 10 princesses. His Royal Highness also sat, but he didn't eat, and it seemed that he was not interested in these things. Princess Ten is not very interested either. In terms of taste, there is no wrong choice, but, why should I please that old man? Patted the table. His Third Highness has become accustomed to his sister's bad temper before getting married and said calmly, "She is younger than you. It's not pleasing, it's showing kindness. We, the Divine Eagle clan, want to give face to the Changdao sect." The 10th princess still wanted to get angry, but the 3rd prince became impatient and said, "The Divine Eagle clan and the Changdaemon have always been good friends, and both sides have been helping each other for a long time. You are not the only one who tests emotions and hearts. If you don't want to, then switch to someone else, but you cannot offend the Changdaemon." "Humph, I'm afraid of them." Princess Ten snorted and didn't get angry anymore. She put down the spoon and let the maid lead the guard down lightly. This is allowing her to enter the dowry. Qing was taken back to the kitchen, and the 2 maidservants gave high-spirited orders to bring everything she needed, so that she could be responsible for any missing items in the future. Qing smiled with a good temper and said, "Where are these things stored? I think some need to be dry, some need to be soaked, and some need to be frozen." She was caught by the 3rd prince, but she had nothing to show. In this situation, she couldn't even change her clothes. She believed that the big bird had scanned her body all over in the first place, and couldn't help but know that she didn't even have an invisible storage ring on her body. If she dares to come up with anything, it will expose the secrets of space. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Transmission Array. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Transmission Array. A day later, Qing, dressed in new attire, stood in the huge wedding procession, feeling depressed. Not to mention that there is a dedicated person in charge of all the ingredients and supplies in the kitchen, she couldn't even get a penny off the cheap side, even her own clothes couldn't be preserved. Originally, each of the 10 princesses had their own team responsible for their food, clothing, and transportation. There were 18 people in charge of eating this piece alone. The person in charge had a proud and coquettish face, and disliked the clothes she was wearing, which were too tacky and shabby. They threw her a set of clothes to change, and even watched as she threw her old clothes into the stove and burned them, earning the nickname, Removing Bad Luck. I'm so angry with her, even though her clothes are not bad. But we are about to enter the teleportation array, the legendary teleportation array. Qing's face turned red with excitement, and he tiptoed up to look hard. Princess Ten's dowry includes 500 people and 500 cars. There are fewer people and cars delivering weddings, but there are also over 300. The entire team is filled with luxury cars, birds and beasts, rushing forward and backward, and the fairy sound is lingering. The wedding carriage was in front, and Qing was at the end. Across a long distance, the fluttering ribbons blocked Qing's sight tightly. I don't know how big the teleportation array is, how many people can be teleported at once. Is it to rotate once when fully loaded, or to deliver immediately upon arrival? Qing was so excited that he rubbed his hands and made sure to be a country bumpkin. The colleagues at the front ignored her, and the guards at the back also ignored her. These demon clans, like the demon clans in Shaoli realm, look down on people. Put down your hand, it looks like you can't make it to the table, said Jubu. Qing didn't take it seriously and said, I've never been on the stage before. A teleportation array, that's a teleportation array that you can go wherever you want. If you think it's beautiful, where the teleportation array can go depends on where the space channel inside is repaired. If the space channel is broken, you can't go anywhere. Pooh, crow mouth. Hey, by the way, how much does it cost to build a teleportation array? Jubu let out a chuckle but didn't answer directly. Qing chuckled in his heart, it must be very expensive, I work hard to make money. The silk cloth almost choked. Do you want to set up a teleportation array at home? Qing. Why not? After half a day, we finally reached the end of the team. We saw a large platform surrounded by white jade railings on a high cloud platform, with mysterious patterns carved on the ground emitting golden light. People walked in and immediately disappeared, like the entrances to the secret realm she had seen before. Excited with her heart and trembling feet, Qing followed her predecessors into the teleportation array and stumbled with a heavy head and light feet. There were indistinct whispers around her, causing her to climb up in embarrassment. It was the first time. Just like taking a plane, get used to it. The spatial passage is like a long corridor, and Qing doesn't move when she sees others standing still. The walls of the passage are black, and the light passing through somewhere makes the view inside bright. She lowers her head and looks down, unable to see what she is standing on. Occasionally, strong light passes by and before it can cover its eyes, it shakes over. Looking up, the darkness above grew deeper and deeper, unable to distinguish between reality and illusion. After standing for half an hour like this, the person in front began to take steps, and she followed suit, crossing an invisible barrier. The person appeared in the teleportation array at the other end. That is also a big platform, also in the cloud. Everyone lined up in the sea of clouds. Qing casually bid farewell to his ears and heard from countless voices that the 3rd prince and the 10th princess said the timing was right, and they could calmly rush to the Changdao gate and directly carry out the ceremony. After subduing the scorching sun, her 5 senses improved significantly. His Highness San is the person in charge of sending off the wedding. Princess Ten did not have her parents to see off when she got married, which is probably not popular, or perhaps because this kind of engagement is not considered a formal engagement. Silk Cloth explained to Qing that refining emotions and testing hearts are common cultivation methods in the immortal world. The called cultivation of spirits by mortals and immortals, from immortals to gods, is more important than accumulating spiritual power and immortal power, which is the power of divine souls. In other words, divine souls are the important content of immortal cultivation. And how to cultivate divine souls? Accumulating soul power is one aspect, but more importantly, it is the breakthrough of the divine soul realm. Where does breakthrough come from? Reflection. The way of perception is countless, and the most easily touched is the way of emotion. Love is elusive, but it's easy to fall in love and get married, isn't it? When Ju Bu said this, Qing retorted on the spot, "Why is it so easy? Can beautiful things be done with anyone at will?" Then Jinbu asked her, "Why is it so beautiful?" Qing choked lightly. Ju Bu said, "This is still a reminder from the human race to the other races. With so many immortal races, only the human race's heart is the most complex and ever-changing, and only the human race's emotions are the most mysterious and unsolvable. It is only the human race's divine soul cultivation that has the most talent." Qing didn't think that the endless entanglement of love and romance was a great talent. She said, "You don't know how troublesome it is for men to be happy and women to be in love. I remember the person I mentioned earlier said that the human race has a rich emotional connection and always makes unexpected decisions based on emotions. This is a talent that other races cannot compare to," sighed Jinbu. Qing said, "I don't understand." "I don't understand either. But he said this is the strength of the human race, and no one can love and hate like a human. Perhaps it's because of this, the human race's spiritual cultivation is stronger than other immortal races. It's also because of this that there is a way to refine emotions and try hearts, and other immortal races can enter the human race to experience emotions." He said, "Everything is for cultivation." Qing shrugged and said, "Even though we can live a simple life, why do we have to seek our own troubles? Silk cloth. Anyway, in my opinion, it's for spiritual cultivation." At this moment, Qing looked at the wedding procession ahead with xianla and petals flying together, without feeling the unique joyful atmosphere of marriage. Perhaps everyone knew that this short century-long engagement was just a cultivation and was not taken seriously. Well, she is still more interested in teleportation arrays. Reluctantly looking back, she only saw the tall guard behind her holding a long ceremonial staff. One of the guards gave her a cold glance, and who lightly shrunk his neck and turned his head. "Oh, she's too weak." After driving for over a day without stopping day and night, on a clear morning, Qing saw the wedding procession of Changdaemon from afar. The most eye-catching one inside was a male immortal standing on a phoenix beast. Qing duo glanced at the beautiful phoenix beast with feathers before going to see the male immortal. "At the moment when I saw my face clearly, I first sighed with a good skin bag and then thought with a dull heart. It seemed that the fairyland was full of handsome men and beautiful women, and whether they were dressed in high or low key, they were all dressed in gorgeous clothes with impeccable facial features. Together, they became aesthetically fatigued. Well, in summary, the groom looks very handsome. I couldn't help but look in the direction of Princess 10, I wonder if she was tempted to see such a groom." The 10th princess did not come out of the wedding carriage, and the 3rd prince approached to greet her. It was evident that she was very familiar with the groom's side during her conversation. "I don't know what to talk about, we talked for a long time. Everyone stands still and waits. Qing is bored, sweeping in the wedding procession. Now her vision is very good, able to see small details in the distance clearly. The matchmaking team consists of over 20 people, each with a smile on their face, all of whom are beautiful young men and women. Well, someone's gaze is straight towards the opposite team. Princess 10 brought many maids, all of whom were beautiful women. It seems that practicing emotions and trying hearts is indeed a common practice. Do these people also want to learn from the groom and bride?" Qing raised his hand and scratched his neck. "The young man is about to fall in love. You can't do it." "What? Forget it. You're still a child in the immortal world," said Jubu Qing. End of this chapter. 10, Chapter 10. Still a baby. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Still a baby. Qingma, she's still a child. Back then, she led Hunmuan into the cultivation world at only 20 years old. The maximum age limit for disciples in the cultivation world is 15. Unless their spiritual roots are particularly good, 15 is considered advanced age. She was in her 20s and had given birth, so she was basically sentenced to death. She also knew that someone must have said behind her back that she was an old woman. I didn't expect to become a child in the fairy world. That's right, she's not 50 yet. Entering the immortal realm is not an ordinary path. There are no mortal beings in the immortal world, and their lifespan is naturally long. Her age and cultivation are not worth considering. The bride ahead is only 7, 8, or 900 years old. Oh, suddenly she's so shy. She's still a baby. The large army slowly flew to the Changdaemon, where the mountains were like jade, adorned with pearls, making it a treasure trove of feng shui. Elderly hosts with a fairy-like demeanor, with the groom and bride dressed in red and green standing at the forefront. Being too far away, Qing couldn't hear what they were saying. It was probably a blessing. The 10th princess remained quiet and did not make any fuss. I wonder if she is very satisfied with the groom. Qing quietly shook her legs, and no one noticed her. She looked around curiously. The crowd observing the ceremony should be disciples of the Changdao sect, perhaps participating in a happy event. Everyone's attire is not uniform, and from a distance it looks like a colorful auspicious cloud. Young people are giggling and laughing, looking no different from Hunyuan and the others. Suddenly, the crowd ahead whispered, and Qing withdrew his mind just as he heard a troublemaker. He was shocked, excited, and looked forward. As everyone gazed, the groom's eyes were not directed towards the bride, but towards another woman, a fairy who felt beautiful just by looking at her back. Qing took a cold breath and started the game in hell. Someone stepped forward to persuade the woman to leave, and the ceremony continued. Surprisingly, Princess 10 did not stir up trouble. Not scientific. She is not someone who swallows her anger. She found out the answer when she went to deliver desserts in the evening. Princess 10's eyebrows and eyes sparkled. Fight me for a man, see how I can make her look good. High morale. Qing confirmed one thing. Princess 10 may not care about the groom, but she is very concerned about her rival in love. Suddenly sympathizing with the poor groom. Wait, where's the groom? Are you not here tonight? The groom arrived and spoke calmly, you don't have to worry about daytime things. Princess 10 snorted arrogantly, I don't care what's up to you. Unable to hear from behind, Qing followed the group of servants and retreated back to their resting yard, silently guarding the fire and listening to gossip. Those who have gone to investigate the identity of the White Lady have not yet returned, those who have bet on Princess 10 on what to do next, and those who are eager to give the people of Changdao Gate a good look. Hey, you, make some food for everyone. Qing heard the sound and looked over, pointing to the tip of his nose. The cold maid nodded. She smiled with a good temper and stood up, her hands clean and busy. The maids behind exchanged something between their eyebrows and eyes. She cooked a pot of small round rice balls, and the night watchers ate them separately. No one praised her or thanked her, all with a natural and aloof demeanor. Qing didn't take it seriously. She was human and her cultivation was too low. In their eyes, being a slave was too high. Sleepless all night, without any orders from Princess 10, the wedding night should be smooth, right? Qing silently calculated his future path. Following the demon princess as a cook is definitely not enough. Fortunately, she married into the human immortal family. Perhaps my turning point is at Changdaemon, and I don't know if there is a cafeteria at Changdaemon. Can I find a small job? Alternatively, it's better to join the miscellaneous staff of the Changdao sect. There should also be miscellaneous staff in the Immortal sect. Right after daydreaming for a while, a maid came to call and asked her to prepare some light and delicious double portions for Princess 10. Ah, is this the progress of the couple? Qing quickly made 10 good symbolic dishes and placed them in the new tableware brought out by the maid. Paired small dishes arranged in the shape of flowers. After arranging his sleeve, Qing stood beside him and was glared at by the maid with displeasure. "Take it and follow me. After speaking, lead the way." Qing picked up the large carved tray at the back, and the maid looked back and chuckled. "It's quite strong." Qing is extremely speechless. Anyone can easily carry this idea. This person is just mocking her for only doing physical labor. Pooh, Birdman. As she was about to reach the entrance of Princess Ten's new house, the maid jumped aside and said, "Go in. Qing doesn't think it's good. In theory, shouldn't there be a reward on the second day of marriage? Why does this maid look like she's afraid to avoid it? It's broken, it's getting cannon fodder." Qing gritted his scalp and headed inside. The new house is a palace, beautifully decorated. To enter the hall and then go back, passing through two small halls, is the bedroom of the 10th princess. She carried the tray backwards and heard an disharmonious sound coming from behind. "Princess 10, my senior brother is not good at words. If you have anything you want to know, just come and ask me. I will definitely say everything I know without hesitation." Qing, is this woman here to cause trouble or to slap her face? Does the wife know her husband through you? What kind of scarecrow are you? The roof was draped with layers of romantic light veils, and as I turned around, I saw Princess 10, dressed in a dazzling red robe, lazily leaning against her beloved throne. Her two slender legs overlapped, and her skirt revealed beautiful lines, squinting her eyes slightly. The woman sitting abruptly in the room is not the one from yesterday, but a gentle and elegant green fairy in green clothes. Tisk, it's really green. The green-clothed fairy continued to say, "Senior brother, he is very quiet. Although he left early to practice, I know he has a princess in his heart. Senior brother went to Dongshan to practice at dawn for hundreds of years, without stopping every day. I can testify." Does Qing listen well? Are you testifying? You have been following the groom's official every day for hundreds of years. She gently lowered the tray and dared not interrupt the Shura field. "I don't know how Princess 10 will respond." Princess 10's response was very simple. She snorted and said, "This princess is bothering you, the human race women, who clearly want to refuse to talk about being petty." The green fairy's face stiffened and she reluctantly tugged at the corner of her mouth. Princess 10 looked at her with a disdainful expression and said, "You, and yesterday's one, all want my man, but my man doesn't want you, otherwise you would be the ones who live here, right?" The fairy in green's face began to turn green. Princess 10 lazily stood up and said, "I don't have the ability to ask a man to marry you. You run up in front of someone unrelated to me and talk nonsense. You don't have the ability or face." The fairy in green couldn't laugh anymore and said, "Princess 10, at least I am my senior brother's junior sister." "You shut up," Princess 10 casually raised her hand. "Last night, the old man exerted so much force that I didn't get angry. How could I give him face?" Qing raised his eyebrows. "These 10 princesses are very good at poking people's hearts. Look, the green fairy has gone to touch her heart. But, I can't resist others' shamelessness. If I don't get angry, I'm really sorry you came to me on purpose." Pa, a whip suddenly appeared in the hand raised by Princess 10, and in an instant, it hit the other side and said, "I won't be joking with you. If you dare to make me unhappy, go and die first." "It's starting to fight." Who quickly retreated to the wall, crouched down and hugged his head, staring at the weapons used by the two. The whip of the 10th princess, the sword of the green fairy. Well, this is an immortal artifact that cannot be delivered by oneself. End of this chapter.